In this video, I'll show you how to write a major key song. I'll discuss the thought process as I sketch out the different parts of the song in real time, so you can see how easy it is to write your own songs. Okay, so I'm over at the computer now, and this is HookPad, which is a great thing for sketching out your songwriting ideas. There's a link in the description if you want to try HookPad for yourself. So everything that you see on screen is pretty much default for HookPad. Maybe you won't be in dark mode, but this is kind of what you'll be presented with when you first come to write a song. So to write this major key song, I'm going to use the key of C major. It's the simplest key to use in songwriting. On the piano, it uses all of the white keys. And you can see here the chords that are in the key of C major with their relevant Roman numerals. So C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. Within HookPad, you create the chords along the bottom row here, and then above it, you will create a melody later on. So the quickest and easiest way to write a major key song is just to set yourself some constraints. By boxing yourself in slightly, it means that it's quicker and easier to write the song. It also means you can be more creative when working within these limitations. So the first constraint I'm going to have is with the type of structure we have for our song. So if you've heard of things like verses and choruses, these are song parts. And your structure is how many of these parts you have within the entire song. So I'm going to use the structure intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, and possibly an outro. When you first start to songwrite, it's best to keep things simple, and then as you become more experienced, you can branch out and experiment more. But your first goal is just to complete a few songs. So using a structure like this will make it really easy, and then using software like HookPad makes it even easier. So if we think about the intro to begin with, the simplest intro is just where you take chords from the chorus and then just repeat them quickly to bring us into the song and to introduce the key of the song. So my first focus is going to be writing chorus and verse chords. Starting with the chords first is the easiest starting point with songwriting. You can kind of bolt it into your structure and then you can create melodies from the notes in the chords. So we'll start with the chorus chords. Another constraint that makes songwriting easy is just to limit your chord progressions to 4 chords. So a chord progression is just a sequence of chords that repeats. And if you create what's known as a chord loop or a chord turnaround, then you only need 4 chords and then they can be repeated, say 4 times to create your chorus. This is a really common thing you'll see in loads of popular music, and it makes for really quick songwriting. Another constraint here is just to play 1 chord per bar. So you see here in HookPad that we have these division lines for the bars, and then within each bar there are 4 smaller divisions. This is because we're in 4/4 time, which means each bar has 4 beats, which are shown by these divisions. So 1 bar would have 4 beats, and we'll just play a chord for an entire bar and then change chords. Another easy idea is to use a chord loop formula. So I'll link a video at the end of this video which will show you more about this. But basically, if you start the first bar with the 1 chord, which is the tonic and the home of the key, and then you end on either chords 4 or 5, then that will create the chord loop. Chords 4 and 5 create what are known as cadences, which pull you back to the 1 chord. So they're the things that end your progression and bring it back round to 1. And allow you to easily repeat the progression. So let's start by adding the 1 chord at the beginning. You just click it here. And then we'll also add the 5 chord at the end. So we've got these 2 chords in between, these 2 bars in between, where we've got a bit of choice. So my thinking is I want the chorus to just be quite upbeat and straight ahead. Now this structure, this 4-bar turnaround, will lead us into that. There's not going to be many surprises here. It's going to be quite straight ahead, quite a basic chorus. So typically you will see the 1, 4, 6 and 5 chords used a lot. I'm going to try and avoid that here. So what I might do is try the 4 chord and then one of the minor chords. So maybe 2. So we've got a 1, 4, 2, 5. Which is C major, F major, D minor, and G major. So let's have a listen to how that sounds. The sounds in HookPad are just default. I've not changed anything. Remember, we're just sketching and creating a song here. It's not a final production. But you can change. There are band options within HookPad if you want to experiment with that. Okay, I'm quite happy with that for the core of our chorus. So what I'll probably do is repeat that 3 times. So that's 12 bars. And then for the final 4 bars, 13, 14, 15 and 16, I want some sort of variation. Maybe ending on the 1 chord as like a closing out of the chorus. So I won't repeat this for now. We'll just work on the end 4 bars of our chorus. So we're coming from the 5 chord. Maybe the surprise will be that we don't start on the 1 chord for the final 4 bars. So I said I wanted to end on the 1 chord. And then maybe in between, we want a kind of journey to the 1 chord. So maybe we could go from 5 to 6, have 4 in the same position. We'll try 2 again. Let's have a listen. So I want to hear how it transitions from 5 into this final bar, this final section of the chorus. Not so sure about 2 to 1. Maybe we'll try out 3 to 1. Let's have a listen to that. I think that's okay. We'll go with that for now. So now we've created our chorus chords, we can also think about which 4 of these we're going to use for the intro. And the obvious choice would be this 1, 4, 2, 5 progression, because it instantly sets up the key. We've got the tonic chord straight away, and we've got the dominant 5 chord setting up the cadence back to 1. So to me, that's the obvious choice for the intro. So that's our chorus and our intro written, or the chords at least. Okay, so I've just tidied things up a bit. Within HookPad, you can create sections and move things around, as you can see here. So here's the intro with the 1, 4, 2, 5 chords. I've created a blank 16-bar section for the verse, which is here. You can see that across here as well. And then here's our 16 bars for the chorus. So the first 4 chords are repeated 3 times. And then we have that closing section there. And then after the chorus, if I highlight this and create a section here, and this will eventually be the bridge. Now in the final structure, if you remember, it goes intro, verse, chorus, bridge. But just for this demonstration, I'll just write each part out so we can create this quickly. Okay, so our next focus is on the chords for the verse. So where we had this simple 4-chord loop for the chorus, that's going to become quite tiring. I think even within this chorus, the 3 repeats might be a little bit tiring. So we want something a bit more complex and interesting for the verse, I would suggest. And that also lends itself to a chorus being simpler, more memorable. We'll try and make the melody the biggest hook of the song over the chorus. So the verse can be a bit more lingering and interesting in our chord selection. So the way I'm going to do this is create another constraint where we're going to use 8-bar loops. So the verse is also 16 bars long, so we're going to have 2 8-bar loops for the verse. But this gives us more room to work within, really. And a great starting point for 8-bar loops is what's known as the Pachelbel's canon progression. Now this is really common. It's used in a lot of popular music, and it works really nicely because it has a nice blend of major and minor, and it leads you in different directions, so it feels like you're going on a bit of a journey with it. So we can use that as our starting point, and I'll just put that progression in the first 8 bars now, and it's 1, 5, 6, 3, 4, 1, 4, 5. So here's how that sounds. That'll be familiar to you. It works really well. It's a great 8-bar loop. So I want to add some rhythmic variation to this. Everything's 1 chord per bar, which again can become quite tiring. So within HookPad, you can edit chord durations like this by dragging, or you can use this selector up in the top left. A nice thing to do is to change chords off of the beat. So you see these division lines here. If I left this selection like this, after beat 2, we're changing between beats 2 and beat 3 of this bar. So have a listen to how that sounds. You see how it suddenly jumps to the 5 chord. Gives an element of surprise. Then if I make this 5 chord even shorter, here, the first bar could look like this. Let's have a listen. Then I could move the 6 across. So sometimes it's nice to have variation within the bar like this, and then something a bit more straight ahead, whether it's a whole bar or a half bar. So let's listen to these two together. I think I'm going to go, let's try half bar with the 6, and then maybe keep 3 to a whole bar, but stretch it across this change of bar, you see? That's another idea you can experiment with. Okay, I'm not sure about that. I might drop that down to half a bar. Let's try again. So I'm quite happy with that introduction to the verse loop. The thing with this, and with a lot of songwriting, is a lot of trial and error. So whether you're writing on the computer like this, in HookPad or other software, or you're on your instrument, you can play around with ideas. So here we've got the constraints and we're working within the constraints. And that's really powerful when you're songwriting, is that you've still got creativity within such limited options. And that's quite nice, really. It's like the boundaries or the margins of what you're working towards. So now I'm going to bring the 4 chord up. Maybe we'll have this for a whole bar. Let's try again. Yeah, I quite like that because it gives us a break from these rapid changes. And then what we could do is sandwich this Pachelbel's 8 bar into the first 4 bars, and then we can do our own thing in the final 4. Remember, we just want to start on 1 and end on 4 or 5. That's our main constraint for the 8 bar loop. So I could bring this 1 across, and then we could alter this. Split this final bar up into 3. Like so. Put 5 in up here. I don't think that's evenly split, but let's go with it. Could try it like that, where 1 and 4 are for the same, are for a beat and a half, and then 5 is just for a single beat. Oh yeah, that sounds quite nice. Let's listen to those first 4 bars. Okay, now a nice thing to do within songwriting generally is to repeat a rhythmic idea, but with different notes. So you see here, I've kind of set up a rhythm and a feeling to this first 4 bars because of these different chord durations. So what I'm going to do for the second 4 bars of the verse is use the same rhythmic ideas and then just put in different chords. So within HookPad I can select these chords, shift and click and then press C to copy them, and then paste them down. And like I said, what I'm going to do is use different chords but maintain this rhythm. So all I have to do is click on a chord and I can try out different chords and maintain that rhythm. So we can audition the different chords and see what we think. So let's try the 6 chord here. I'm going to try the 4 chord here, and then we've not used the 2 chord, so let's try this. 6, 4, 2, 3. Let's go for that. Not sure about 2 to 3. I like 6 to 4. We could bring in the 1 chord here and have it in the middle of the final 4 bars. Let's try that. And then go for some tension here with the 5 chord. You can see I'm generally avoiding the diminished chord. Most popular songs won't use it at all. I might consider it for the bridge. We'll talk about that in a moment. The other thing to note at this point is that I'm only using basic chords, basic triads, but you've got options to use 7th chords, 9th chords, sus chords. That's beyond the scope of this video, but they're there if you want to experiment with them. Generally speaking, I'd suggest that you sketch out your song like this with basic triads before you bring in other chords, because then you can think about the impact of those different chord types. I like the 4 to 5 change at the end, and that helps us meet our rules. I might not play the 1 chord again here though. Let's try 6. Right, let's listen to the whole verse now. I'm quite happy with that. Okay, you get the idea. I could have just repeated this first 4 bars again. That would have been perfectly fine. I could have changed the rhythm, as I said, that's up to you. Our overarching goal here was just to start with 1 and end with 5 or 4. And so we've achieved that. There's so many ways you could do this. But for the purpose of this video, let's move on to the bridge. Typically in a song, the point of a bridge is to take us somewhere else. So that might introduce chords we've not heard, or it might introduce ideas we've not heard before, or it might introduce a key change if you're a bit more advanced. One way to feel like you've gone somewhere else is to avoid the 1 chord and thereby denying the tonic. It can feel like we're almost moving into a different key. I feel like that's what I want to do with the bridge. I also feel like I want to introduce the diminished chord. It's up to you whether you want to use the diminished chord, whether you can play it on your instrument, whether you like the sound of it, but it is an option here. As I said earlier, you can also consider different chord types. Maybe the bridge introduces denser, more complicated chords. Again, it's about feeling like we've gone somewhere else, particularly in this sort of song structure. So I think I'm going to try the 7 diminished chord here. I'm just going to write an 8-bar bridge, so I need to add some more bars afterwards. Here we go. So we're going to start on 7. 7 and 6 are going to be the main focus of this, and this could, if you use the whole song like this, it would start to feel like you're pulling yourself into the minor key based around the 6th chord. That's beyond this lesson, but for now, just think we're moving away from the 1 chord for a little bit, so it sounds a bit different. Might start with the first 2 bars as whole bars, and then as we go through the bridge we'll gradually reduce the duration of the chords so it feels like we've kind of slowed down and we're speeding up. So we've gone 6, 7 to 6, maybe we'll go 4 and 5 and have these on more of a, create that offbeat rhythm here. Let's have a listen to that. That sounds too triumphant. What if we go the other way? I like that rhythm to end this first section. So we could go 7, 6, 4, 5. After 5 you feel like you're going back to 1, but we could go back to 6. We could go 4, 5, 4, 6. Let's try that. Again with this offbeat rhythm. Let's have a listen to that. I'm quite happy with that. Now let's see what the 2 chord sounds like. Half bars, 2 and 3. I think I want to go back to the 7 chord here. Maybe the 6 again. We said 6 wanted to be the focus. And then we could do this 4 and 5 change again, but then linger on 5. And then have a rapid build up at the end. Remember, we're going back into the chorus after this. So we're going straight towards the 1 chord. 7 would be a good lead in to end here, tense lead in. I think I'll go 4 and 5 again. Hold the 5. And then I want 7 again. Or if we play it like that. That sounds good. So let's add some bars after the bridge, just so we can hear that first 4 bars of the chorus and how that leads in from the bridge. So I'll add some more bars after this. And just for the purpose of this, we're going to copy those chorus chords and paste them in here. Let's have a listen to the bridge in the first 4 bars of the chorus. bit of a rendering error there, but leads us nicely into the chorus. So I hope that's given you a feeling for how to write the chords for a song. This should give you an insight into the real-time thinking that you might be going through when you write a song. It's worth noting that there are many ways to write a song. This is only one way. This is only one way that I write a song. It's not the only way I use. But hopefully it gives you an insight into the thought process and how much you can achieve in a relatively short amount of time. Okay, let's now move on to writing the melodies. So as you know, melody is really important for music. When it comes to copyright, actually, you can't copyright chord progressions, but you can copyright melodies. So they have a really big impact on how your songs sound and how they feel. You could have relatively simple chords and a more fancy or elaborate melody on top. So they can really shape the sound of your song, and they often provide the main hook or the main point of interest in your music. If you write lyrics, melodies and lyrics are very closely related. I'm not going to write lyrics in this video, but some people like to start with some lyrics and write melodies to the lyrics. So if that's you, you might want to start the process with your lyrics and then move to the melody. But for us, I like to go chords first and then melody. As you'll see in a second, there's a good reason why this is. So we'll start with the chorus, because the chorus is the focus of our song and where the melody really needs to shine and stand out. As you can see on HookPad now, I've highlighted the chord notes in the melody section above. So as the chords change, you can see that the 3 notes change as we go along. And then on the left-hand side, there are 7 notes. These are in the C major scale, which the C major key is created from. So all of these chords are created with these notes. So we can use these notes in our melody. So what I like to do is to use the chord notes like a scaffolding. They're going to give us the basis for our melody, and then we can try other techniques and other notes around them. The thing is, if you use chord notes in your melody, they sound really safe, and there's a good reason for that, because they're already being heard. For example, if I'm playing a C major chord, that's actually the notes C, E and G played at the same time. So if I use the notes C, E and G in a melody over the C major chord, it's going to sound safe and harmonious. So let's give that a go. You can see them highlighted here. So I'll just use some quarter note lengths or 1 beat lengths to demonstrate this. So let's just go C, E, G, E. If I play that back now, you'll hear how safe and nursery rhyme like this sounds. So to begin, you can use this idea and just sketch out a rough melody. Now your options are really limited, so a lot of this will just feel like you're going up and down the chord like an arpeggio, which is fine if that's what you want, but you might want to think about it a little deeper. So the first thing you can try, which doesn't involve any new notes, is not starting each bar with the root note. So you see in this first bar, I've played C as the first note in the melody, and C is the root note of the C major chord. So a similar thing would be if I played F in this second bar as the first note. And even within the confines of the chord notes, starting the bar with a root note is the safest of the safe, as you can hear here. Very safe, no tension, everything's falling on the bar. There's no worries at all, you know, there's no danger within this melody. So one thing you can do is just to not start each bar with the root note. So to give you a contrast here, we could start this second bar with F major, with C again, like the first bar, but because C isn't the root note in the F major chord, it will have a slightly different feel. So let's have a listen to that. And that's a very simple thing you can try. There are some other ideas which we'll come on to in a moment, but before we go there, let's think about the shape of the melody we want to create here. The chorus is the main focus, and in order to make something the main focus in a song, and particularly with melody, the easiest thing you can do is to have the highest note in the whole song played in the chorus. The thing with high notes is they stand out, and they also signify higher emotion. So having the highest point of your melody in the chorus signifies that this is an important part of the song. Now, where within the chorus you have that high point is up to you. You could have a melody where the high point is throughout the chorus. Or you could start the chorus on a high, coming from the verse to a high, and then gradually come down. Or in the opposite way, you could start low in the chorus and build towards a high point. I think what I'm going to do is, if you remember with the chords I've got in the chorus here, we end on this kind of minor section, this change section. So I feel like I want to start on a high point for this 1, 4, 2, 5 repeated bit, and then we're going to be drawn down towards this one chord in a lower register. That's generally the shape I'm thinking of. So for example here, I could make these C notes in a higher octave, and then we could work towards a lower C note in this final one. That's one way of sketching out that kind of shape or contour for this chorus. Now obviously the notes are going to go up and down in between, but they could be our kind of guiding principles for the chorus. So the next thing we can consider, without introducing any notes beyond the chord notes, is the idea of note lengths and where those notes fall in the bar. So you can see here we've started with these quarter notes, and they all fall on the beats of the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is as predictable as it gets. So what if we move the notes within the bar? So take this second bar here. What if I shift these notes slightly so they're off the beat? You can see they're still quarter note in length, but listen to the difference. You see how they sound kind of out of place and skipping? I could shift them along a bit more so they kind of fall halfway between, and you'd get this kind of feeling. So experiment with where your notes fall in the bar. The other thing is the length of the notes. So you can make notes shorter. I could make that an 8th note, and then this one an 8th note, which are heard for half of a beat, and it would sound like this. Gives more pace and more interest to the melody. And then the other thing we can do, you can also vary notes further. So maybe we have this kind of short passage here with rapid fire notes. And these shorter note lengths are useful for passing notes, which I'll come on to in a moment. You can experiment with chord notes, but it gives you quite a linear melody. Non-chord notes involve these other notes, these other 4 notes in this case, that aren't in the underlying chord. Now, obviously, if you're using seventh chords or other types of chords, they might have more than 3 notes in them. So you'll have a wider range of chord notes to choose from. But here we've got 4 notes that are in the scale, but they're not in the chord. And that means that they're still going to work, they're still going to sound good because it's all within the key, but they will add something a bit different, a little bit of tension, a little bit of something extra that the chord notes just can't bring. And these are often called passing notes. And the reason for that is, say you're linking 2 notes and you want to kind of fill in the gap, then these non-chord notes could work out. So in this second bar, I've got the high C and this F note. And so in between, currently I'm playing A and F, but you could use this G note. And this will give you a kind of ladder down to the F note. It's a passing note between the 2. Or, so here's how that sounds. You could also, I could have chosen B here and gone for a more extended ladder down. So I'm going to rearrange this first bar because it's a bit boring. Give it something a bit extra. What I might do is come up to this B, so we begin in a higher place up the top here. Another thing to consider in your melody is when you don't play a note, and that's called a rest. So here I'm going to put in a quarter note rest. You can see that with this grey bar. Melody, if you're constantly firing notes at people in a melody, then they're going to become tired. Much like if you constantly play the same note length, they're going to become tired. If you constantly play chord notes, they're going to become tired. It's all about balance. When do we hear long notes and short notes? When do we hear high notes and low notes? When do we have silence and then some notes? Songwriting is all about balance. It's like balancing tension and resolution in your chords. So always be happy for some silence. It's not like a conversation. It's good sometimes in your songs to have silence. It can build tension or it can build interest. So let's have a listen to this now. Okay, that sounds a bit more interesting straight away, just bringing in this B note and these shorter note durations. I'm going to put a rest at the end of this bar as well. There are some more things we can try now that we've got a wider palette of notes. You see we've got these non-chord notes, and the beats that they fall on are important. So the first beat in a bar, this is in 4/4 time, is always the strongest beat, and then the third beat is the second strongest. But placing any non-chord note at the beginning on the beat of any of the beats will make it more prominent. So in this first bar, this B note actually falls on the second beat. So it's more prominent, whereas here, this non-chord G note doesn't fall on the beat. It falls between the beats, so it's not as prominent. So have a listen to that. Pay particular attention to this B note and this G note to notice the difference in tension. You see how much more this B rang out in your mind. So if you place non-chord notes in stronger positions on the beat, then they will stand out more. And they will add more tension, which can be just what you're looking for. So bear that in mind when thinking about the placement of your notes. So far we've just confined the notes into the bars, but you can of course hold notes over chord changes. And that can create some really interesting sounds. So there's a few different ways you can do this. The first one's called a suspension, and that's where you hold a chord note and then it becomes a non-chord note. So let's try this here. You can see we're going from F to D minor, and a chord note, we could try F, but F is between the two, and so is A. But if you look here, we've got C, and C is a chord note in F, but it's not in D minor. So if I play C here, I'm going to play it high again because I want to maintain that higher register. And if I hold that over the chord change, you can see it moves from chord note in F to non-chord note in D minor. So let's listen to how that sounds. And maybe just have two longer notes over this D minor chord. I think I'll go down to B, and you'll see why I've chosen B in a moment. Now let's have a listen to the melody. Now the next thing you can do with holding notes over chord changes is anticipation. And this is where you hold a non-chord note that becomes a chord note, which is why I wanted this B note here, because you can see B is not in the D minor chord, but it is in the G major chord. So let's see what happens when we hold a B note over this chord change. Has a slightly different feel compared to this suspension here. And you can also hold shared notes. You can see that there's often common notes between chords here. Between D minor and G, there's this D note, for example. And one of the most important things in melody is rhythm. You saw with these early bars that moving away from just quarter notes introduced interest and really brought this melody to life. This is where there's a lot of link between syllables in your lyrics and how you sing and the rhythm you come out with. Or if you're interested in rap music, and the lyrical flow of the syllables is really, really important. That rhythm is important in all melody. In some ways it's the most important thing because there aren't many notes to choose from, but there's so many ways you can vary the rhythm, the duration of each note, that can really change how your song feels. So what you often want to do is take rhythmic elements and repeat them. So you see, I like this rhythmic element in bar 2. So I'm going to copy that and repeat it here. And I could change the notes, but let's have a look. Let's have a listen. So I'm going to change the notes here. This introduces an idea called sequences. So sequences take the same melodic shape and move it up or down over different chords. So what that means is you're taking shape, rhythmic idea, and varying it over the chord changes. Some people you might see where they start with an idea like this, and then as the chords change, they just move it up. So, for example, you would take this idea here, then you would move to the next, which has a C at the top, a F at the bottom. You'd move it up one scale degree, and it'd go from D to G, and you could even do it again like that, and just keep rising or falling. You see it a lot in popular music with sequences. As with everything, sequences are really powerful, but you don't want to overdo it because then it becomes boring and predictable. So you can create sequences and then break them. That's quite interesting. So let's come back to this melody over the G major chord here. I feel like I want to go down to maybe this D note here. Let's listen. No. I think that's okay. We could extend it to drop further. So remember here, I've got 16 bars to play with. Let's listen to this sequence. I wasn't going to keep it. No. It doesn't sound great. Another thing you can do, which I haven't really done here, is you can just shift ideas off of the first bar. At the moment, every first beat of each bar has melody notes. But what if, for example, on this repeat, we shift this repeated sequence idea off of the first beat of the bar? How does that sound? That sounds quite good because it gives us the sequence idea, but it's fresh, so I could probably repeat that over this second F chord. And then I don't want to repeat it a third time, but I could come back to this initial rhythmic idea. Again, to provide some coherence across. You can see here, this has no chord notes. How's that going to sound over that D minor chord? Let's have a listen. I think I'll move up at the end to this chord note and hold it over into this G major. So you can see, although we've come down here, I'm still coming back up to this high C. And in the back of my mind is that low C at the end. But that will lead to that when we change to those minor chords in the last 4 bars. I think I'm just going to go to a G note here. Nothing fancy. I think I'll bring it in a little earlier. Okay, now let's have a talk about steps and leaps. We've kind of seen this in action, but steps are where notes are next to each other, like these sequences down. And leaps are where you have bigger jumps. So there's a bit of a jump here from this high C to this G. And as I've said with everything else, you want to balance the steps and leaps in your melodies. Lots of steps are easy, but they become boring because they're close together, so there's not much, you know what's coming next. Leaps are more dramatic. Leaps signify effort and emotion. If you've got a big leap, then it showcases something as important. But if you have lots of leaps, then it becomes a bit chaotic and overwhelming. So you want to balance leaps with steps. So far in this melody, I would suggest I've had quite a lot of steps. There's a leap here from F to C. Makes this C stand out. And leaps and steps can be in both directions. You can leap down, leap up, etc. So where do we want to take this melody next? Because it's a slightly longer chorus, I feel like we want to take the melody somewhere else, so we want to create some new rhythmic idea. But I'm not yet down in the low C register. We're still saving that, so I don't want to come down too far. The range of this melody is only an octave from C to C. You can, of course, go higher and lower. It will depend on what instrument you're using or how competent the singer is. That's why some singers prefer different keys and different ranges. You'll see some songs are really narrow in their range, maybe for a less confident singer or a certain style of singer. So that's something to bear in mind when you're writing your melody as well. I feel like I want to introduce a leap. Maybe we could go down through the notes here. So we go G to C and then F to that high C again. We've got a stagger of leaps there. Listen to how it's verging on chaotic. I feel like here we need to step from this C now, because these leaps have become too much. Can maybe get away with going to A and holding that over the chord change. Or G. And then I'm going to come back to this initial rhythm here. I like that 3-note sequence there, B, C, G. If I repeat that over D minor, that's what I did in the previous 4 bars. So that can tie us back to that. Let's have a listen to where we are now. That could work. It's not fantastic, but again, you would want to think about, are there phrases that have appeared elsewhere in the song that you're rhythmically carrying into the chorus? You might occasionally reprise something in the verse just to kind of hint at what's going to come up in the chorus. That's an idea. Is there a riff or a motif on an instrument that I could bring in? Or are certain lyrics more important than others that I want to highlight with a high note? All of these considerations go into writing your melody. And you can always come back and revise things. Maybe you sketch out the song like this and then you start performing it. You think, actually, this melody note doesn't work here. Or if you're singing and playing it at the same time, maybe you think, actually, I can't perform that at the same time, or I don't like how it sounds. So it's a constant process of revision, trial and error and revision. But for now, we're going to finish off this melody. As I said, I want to come down to this C note. So maybe a nice stepped sequence down to C to bring us in. This is the first time A minor is being heard in the chorus. So I might introduce a rest at the beginning so we can hear that chord fully. And then we were up around this G note. So we could start on A. Like that. I could create a sequence with that rhythm by repeating this over the F chord and bringing it down. Let's have a listen to that. No, I'm not keen on that. What if I maintain it? That doesn't sound too bad. It's a similar idea to what I did here, but I might change the end, so there's a bit of variation. And we step down to this F note, which I could then hold into this this E minor chord. Or I could bring this down. How does that sound? That sounds better. It's the same notes, but you've varied it slightly. I want to add a bit of speed and haste here. And I think it would be nice to end on this idea, but with the lowest note being that low C. Like that, maybe. We've got to link the two, so let's have a think about this. And more of a break here. I'm not sure about the rhythm of this part. I'm going to take a bit of tweaking. But for now, that gives you an idea of how to write a chorus melody. And then what you could do is you take exactly the same ideas and you'd go back to the verse and you'd think, okay, how can I write a melody for this verse? What is this verse trying to convey? In this example, there's more minor chords. So do we want to use these chord notes to really highlight the minor flavour? You might say, oh, we'll use chord notes over the minor chords, and over the major chords we'll use non-chord tones, so the minor chords feel safer. There's all sorts of experimentation you can attempt with this. The next step would be to think about the arrangement of the song. That involves looking at how and where you play the chords on your chosen instrument or software. If you perform with other musicians, it will also include how the different parts work together as a whole. Then you can take the song to record and produce it if required. You now know how to write a major key song, but you don't know the reason why these chords work well together. I have a really simple system for explaining major key chord functions, which will transform your songs. Watch the video on screen now to take your major key knowledge to the next level.